She said she was working late, said it was chaos at the office. Numbers. Deadlines. Her boss breathing down her neck. I told her not to worry. I'd keep dinner warm. Then the Uber receipt hit our shared email. Not her office. His condo. Again, that word didn't just sting, it hollowed me out. Because this time, I had proof. My name's Matthew. I'm 42. I've been married to Claire for almost 7 years. And until that moment, I thought we were still writing the same story. Turns out, she'd started a new chapter, one I wasn't invited to. The thing about betrayal is, it's not always loud. Sometimes it slides in through the back door, wearing excuses that sound just close enough to truth. I'm swamped at work. It's a working dinner. We're just friends, Matt. I used to believe her. God help me. I wanted to. Claire was the kind of woman who made everyone in the room feel like they belonged. That was her magic. The way she smiled when she talked. The way she remembered people's birthdays, their dogs' names, their favorite wine. She made our life feel warm. So when she started coming home late more often, I didn't panic. When her phone lived face down on the kitchen counter, I assumed it was habit, not strategy. I even told myself it was good she had work that made her feel important. That's the dumb thing about trust. You give it away like a gift card you forgot how to balance, until you try to use it and find out it's empty. The first Uber receipt showed up 2 months ago. I thought it was a mistake, a routing glitch. She said her coworker lived near that area. Maybe they carpooled. I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I wasn't ready to hold the alternative. But this time, there was no mistaking it. Her name, her pickup location, our address. Her drop-off, 3147, Madison Avenue, Unit 6B. I'd Googled it the first time. I knew who lived there. Connor, her work friend. The one she said was going through a rough divorce and just needed someone to talk to. Apparently, she had time to talk. Just not to me. That night, I didn't rage. Didn't throw things. Didn't even call her. Instead, I waited. Made her favorite pasta. Poured 2 glasses of wine. Lit a candle like I was trying to give her the chance to walk into a moment that still felt like us. She came in just past 10. Hair windswept. Eyes a little too bright. Said, God, I'm exhausted. I nodded. She didn't notice the candle. Didn't ask about the wine. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she needed a shower, and disappeared down the hallway. I sat there with the pasta cooling on our plates and thought, this is how marriages die. Not with shouting. Not with some dramatic affair revelation. Just with one person staring across a table that no longer seats 2. 2 days later, I followed her. Not in the dramatic movie sense. No trench coat, no fedora, no jazz soundtrack. Just me, in my Camry, parked down the block like I was waiting for a slice of myself to come home. She left work at 6:17 p.m. I watched her laugh with someone at the crosswalk, then head the opposite direction of our house. 15 minutes later, she walked into Connor's building. No laptop bag, no client folder, just her, carrying something I couldn't name anymore. That night, I didn't ask questions. I just watched her. The way she untied her shoes like she hadn't been at another man's apartment. The way she microwaved the pasta she'd ignored the night before. The way she touched my shoulder like I was still her husband and not some relic she didn't know how to get rid of. I stared at that hand, and something inside me broke a little. You know what's worse than being lied to? Realizing you trained them how to do it. I used to pride myself on being easygoing, chill, not the jealous type. I wore my trust like armor. Told myself that real love meant not snooping, not accusing, not playing detective. So she learned. She learned exactly how much silence she could feed me before I'd ask for more. And now, all that trust I'd handed her without condition, it sat there in my chest, curdled and useless. The next morning, I emailed myself the Uber logs. Labeled the file, House Projects. Then I backed up every calendar entry she'd shared. Then I sat at our kitchen table, where we used to play cards and dream about a house in Vermont, and I wrote one sentence in a new document. She said she was working late. That was my breadcrumb. My timestamp. The phrase that would become the start of the end. Different lie. She even texted me a picture from the bar, half-finished drink, someone's arm barely in frame, probably a coworker. But I recognized the wallpaper. Connor's place. She'd sent it last year when we helped him move in. Said she liked his taste. Now she was helping herself to more than the decor. I didn't tell anyone yet. Not my brother. Not my best friend, Daniel, who would have driven over that night with a bottle and a bat if I let him. I wasn't ready for reactions. I just needed space to feel this before other people made it real. That's the thing about heartbreak. Everyone wants to fix it for you. Patch it up. Paint over it. But sometimes, you've got to sit in the mess long enough to understand what broke. A week passed. Then another. Then she told me she was going on a work retreat. Just 2 nights, some leadership thing. And maybe she really thought I'd buy it. Maybe she thought I was still the guy who believed her red windbreaker sketches weren't finished. But I wasn't. Not anymore. So I packed a small bag, took a couple vacation days, and drove 2 hours south to the place on the confirmation email she forgot to log out of on our shared desktop. A cabin lodge. Supposedly company sanctioned. I waited. From the back deck of my Airbnb, I watched her pull up Friday evening, not in a company van, but in Connor's Tesla. They checked in together, smiling, laughing. She touched his chest in that way she used to touch mine when she wanted something she didn't know how to ask for. And then they disappeared inside. I didn't follow them, didn't bang on doors or snap photos. Instead, I sat on that deck with a notebook in my lap and a pen I hadn't used since our anniversary trip to Oregon, and I wrote. She said she was working late, but she wasn't building a future. She was erasing one. The next morning, I packed up and drove home. And when I walked into the kitchen and smelled the ghost of last week's coffee and the dried flowers she'd left on the counter, I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want answers anymore. I wanted closure. And sometimes, the only way to get it is to give them the chance to tell the truth and watch what they do with it. She came back Sunday evening, wheeled her little carry-on through the door like she'd just closed a successful deal, not spent 2 nights pretending I didn't exist. She smiled, said the retreat was rejuvenating, that the team had done trust exercises, personality tests, even a silent hike. I stared at her and said, "Did you learn anything new about yourself?" She laughed, kissed me on the cheek, said that I'm more adaptable than I thought. And I thought, yeah, I bet. Monday morning, I didn't go to work. I called in, said I needed a personal day, which was true, because I'd reached the moment where heartbreak turns from fog into fire, and fire wants clarity. I spent the morning gathering, not clothes, not my toothbrush, no dramatic bags by the door, just the pieces, receipts, screenshots, hotel confirmation from her fake retreat, texts that no longer made sense unless you read them sideways. And the photo, the one from the cabin parking lot, her hand on his shoulder, his fingers brushing her waist. It was blurry, but not blurry enough. That evening, I made dinner, her favorite, chicken marsala with wild rice and those green beans she always overcooked because she said crisp veggies feel like punishment. She walked in surprised, said, "What's the occasion?" I shrugged, just wanted to have a good night. She poured wine, set the table. We sat across from each other like we hadn't already drifted continents apart. She talked about work, her boss, some new client who needed a full audit on short notice. I just listened, smiled where I was supposed to, nodded when required, and waited. After we cleared the plates, I brought out a small manila envelope, set it between us on the table. She didn't touch it, just stared. I said, "Before you say anything, I need you to know I already know." Her face didn't fall. It froze, like her mind was flipping through scripts, trying to figure out which one to read from. "I don't know what you mean." That was her first response. Not denial, just confusion. I stayed calm, didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse, just slid the envelope across the table. I followed the receipts, and I saw the photos. "You weren't at a retreat, Claire. You were at a lodge with him." A beat, then another. She reached for the envelope with hands that barely moved, opened it, saw the evidence, and suddenly the room got quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just looked up and said, "How long have you known?" And in that moment, I couldn't tell if she was sorry for what she'd done, or just sorry I found out. And maybe that was the worst part. I said, "Long enough to stop feeling crazy." She nodded slowly, took a sip of wine like she was trying to wash down the taste of truth. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said. Those were her exact words. Like she'd tripped and landed in someone else's bed. I asked her how long it had been going on. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "I don't know," which told me everything I needed to hear. The rest of the night played out like a slow-motion car crash. She confessed to feeling disconnected, said things had been off between us for a while, that she'd tried to bring it up, but didn't want to hurt me, that Connor made her feel seen. I asked her what I'd made her feel. She didn't answer, just looked at the table like the truth might be hiding in the grain of the wood. I didn't yell, didn't tell her what kind of man Connor really was, the kind who texted her at 2 a.m. while I was sleeping 10 feet away. Didn't bring up the friend of mine who told me, months ago, that he got a weird vibe from how she talked about her coworker. Because the point wasn't to win. It was to stop playing. Before I left the table, I said one last thing. "I'm not going to beg you to choose me, Claire. That's not love. That's hostage negotiation." She looked up, eyes red but dry. "Then what do you want?" I stood, said, I want peace. And I want my life back. Then I walked out of the dining room. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was chasing her shadow. I felt like I was finally stepping into my own light. The night I left, I didn't pack much. Just a duffel with 3 days' worth of clothes, my laptop, and the watch Claire gave me for our 3rd anniversary, the one she had engraved with "Still Your Favorite Hello." I didn't take it out of guilt. I took it because I wanted to remember how good love feels before it starts lying to your face. I stayed with Daniel. He offered the couch. I took the guest room, said I didn't want to talk. He said, all right, man. But if you change your mind, there's a bottle of scotch with your name on it. That first night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling fan, listening to the blades hum like they had something to say. And in the silence, it hit me. I didn't feel heartbroken. Not in the way movies make you think it'll feel, not shattered, sobbing, lost. I felt tired. Tired of second-guessing. Tired of pretending. Tired of setting the table for someone who was already eating somewhere else. The next morning, Claire texted, "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Didn't respond. Half an hour later, "Please. I need to explain." But there wasn't anything left to explain. She didn't forget to be faithful. She chose not to be. And once you see someone's capable of that kind of choice, it doesn't matter what drove them to it. They drove. I was just the one watching the taillights disappear. Over the next few days, I went quiet, called a lawyer, just to get the facts. We didn't have kids. The house was in both our names. The savings were mostly mine. It would be clean. Messy in the emotional way, but clean in the legal one. That's when I learned something else. The account Claire had for work expenses, the one we never talked about, she'd used it to book a hotel 3 separate times in the last 4 months. Different cities. Always on the nights she missed her train. It was subtle, just enough to slide under the radar. But the moment I saw the dates, something inside me just shut off. You can grieve a person while they're still breathing. And I was already wearing the funeral suit. Claire showed up at Daniel's 3 nights later. I don't know how she found the address. Maybe she remembered it from that dinner party last year. She knocked. Daniel opened the door, looked at her, then turned to me like I was the one who had to decide if the storm came in or stayed on the porch. I nodded once. She stepped inside. Didn't sit. Didn't cry. Just stood in the center of the room, hand shaking, looking like she hadn't slept since I left. She said, "I don't want to lose you." I said, "You already did." She blinked, swallowed. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I nodded. That's what people say when they leave the road and keep driving anyway. She stepped closer. "Do you still love me?" And for a second, I didn't know what to say, because part of me did. Not the part with logic or pride, but the part that still remembered college walks, late-night pancakes, the first time she fell asleep on my chest and murmured that she never felt safer. But love, I've learned, isn't always an argument for staying. Sometimes, it's the reason you finally leave. I said, "I think I love the version of you who didn't lie to me." And I don't know where she went. She didn't argue, didn't plead, just stood there in the quiet, then whispered, "So that's it." I said, "No, that's the beginning." When she left, Daniel came back into the room. Didn't say anything, just sat beside me. We stared at the wall for a while, and finally, I said it out loud. "I think I want a divorce." He nodded like he'd known before I did. And I think, in some way, I had too. Because staying together out of fear isn't loyalty. It's self-preservation with a mask on. And I was done pretending. Claire didn't contest the divorce. That's what hit me hardest. Not the infidelity, not the lies, not even the hotel receipts. It was how easily she agreed to let go. No grand gestures. No airport scenes. No slow-motion promises to change. Just a signature. Like it was a business deal we'd both grown bored of. I moved back into the house a week after the papers were filed. She'd already gone. Left her key on the counter, a few mugs in the sink, and a handwritten note I didn't read until 3 days later. It wasn't an apology. It was a eulogy. A soft goodbye wrapped in past tense. She said she hoped I found someone who looked at me like I mattered. Funny thing was, she used to look at me that way. Until she didn't. The quiet was heavy at first. Not loud, just present. The kind of silence that settles into your ribs like cold air. The couch felt bigger. The bed felt unfamiliar. And the coffee tasted like someone else's morning. But eventually, I got used to it. Started relearning things I hadn't realized I forgot. How I like my eggs when no one's watching. How it feels to go a whole day without walking on emotional eggshells. How music sounds when it's not covering up suspicion. Daniel called often. More than usual. He never said it outright, but I could tell he was checking to see if I was holding together or falling apart in slow motion. I told him I was fine. And mostly, I was. Until I wasn't. It happened one night, around midnight. I was scrolling through my phone, cleaning out old messages. Found a video from 2 summers ago. Claire in our backyard, sun in her hair, laughing so hard she couldn't finish her story about getting lost at the farmer's market. I watched it twice, then again, and by the fourth time, I felt it, that ache. Not for her necessarily, but for the version of me who still believed. That man didn't see it coming. He thought trust was enough. He thought love was a straight line. The next morning, I made a choice. Not a big one. Not dramatic. I just stood in my kitchen and whispered out loud, I forgive you. Not because she earned it, but because I needed it. Holding anger is like drinking salt water. You keep swallowing, hoping it'll quench something, but all it does is dry you out. And I was done being thirsty for an apology that would never taste right. After that, things got simpler. I sold the bed, donated the couch, painted the living room, rearranged the photos on the wall, not to erase her, but to reclaim the space. People say starting over is brave. I think it's just honest. It means admitting the thing you built isn't home anymore. And instead of squatting in the ruins, you pick up a hammer and start again. A month later, I got a message. Connor, of all people. He didn't apologize, didn't explain, just said, I didn't mean for things to happen that way. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then typed back, good news, you don't get to decide how they land. Blocked his number, not out of bitterness, out of mercy for me. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I went back to the coffee shop where Claire and I first met. Not on purpose. I was just walking that part of town. Figured I'd grab something warm, sit near the window. Didn't even realize where I was until I stepped inside, and the smell hit me. Cinnamon scones and old jazz. I almost turned around, but I didn't, because the pain wasn't sharp anymore. It had dulled into something almost educational. A scar, not a wound. I ordered black coffee, no cream. Sat in the corner booth, the same one we used to fight over like it was sacred ground. Watched the door for a while. People came. People went. No one cheated. No one lied. Just strangers, trying their best to love and be loved. And I thought, maybe that's all any of us are ever doing. Fumbling toward each other in the dark, hoping the next hand we reach for doesn't pull away. A woman sat down at the next table. Mid-30s maybe. Brown coat. Book in hand. Smile like she knew who she was. She caught me looking, gave a polite nod, and went back to her page. Nothing happened. I didn't ask her name. Didn't flirt. But something in her presence reminded me. The world didn't end. Claire wasn't the final chapter. Just the one that taught me how the story shouldn't be told. I got up to leave. Tossed my cup. Held the door open for an older couple walking in hand. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt free. Not in a euphoric way. In a quiet, earned way. The kind of freedom that comes from walking through fire and coming out clean on the other side. Back home, I found the watch Claire gave me. Still in its case, still engraved. I turned it over in my hands. Still your favorite hello. Not anymore. Now it was just a watch. I placed it in a donation box with a few other things. Her books, the sweater I never liked, the wine opener we bought in Italy. Letting go isn't a single act. It's 1,000 small decisions to choose yourself, over and over again. That night, I stood in the doorway of what used to be our bedroom, took a breath, and moved the last of her things to the garage. Not out of anger, out of kindness, to myself. Because you can't begin again in a house full of ghosts. I still think about her sometimes. Not the betrayal, not the lies, just the version of her I loved. The way she used to laugh when I tickled her knee. The way she danced in the kitchen when she thought I wasn't looking. And then I think, that version of her loved me, too. Before something changed. Before late nights turned into long silences. Before Connor. Before the receipts. But here's the truth. What we had wasn't a failure. It was just finished. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let something in before it kills you both. These days, I sleep better. Breathe easier. Cook dinner for one without flinching. And when people ask if I'm seeing anyone, I just smile and say, not yet. But I'm open. Because I am. Not to chaos. Not to repair jobs dressed up as romance. But to something real. Something slow. Honest. Whole. She said she was working late. But what she was really doing was writing me out of her story. And what I'm doing now, I'm writing myself back in. On my terms. With peace. With clarity. With hope. No secrets. No shared emails. No more pretending. Just me. And that quiet, beautiful possibility of starting again. This time, with someone who shows up. Fully. Without hiding.